Call in order to the regular meeting of the Watchung Board of Education on March 18th at 7:03 p.m. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Board of Education, Borough of Watchung. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are on open public and media consistent to the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Laws of 1975, and that an advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung at which formal action may be taken. This meeting is streamlined on the district website, where a recording of the meeting will also be posted. The public will have an opportunity to be heard, shown on the agenda at points in the meeting provided for the public to address the board. Recordings or photography other than the private personal use requires the consent of parent guardians whose children may be included in the image. Ms. Karen Bishop-Johnson, roll call, please.
Yes. Mrs. Agliaro.
Here.
Mrs. Amadeo.
Here.
Mr. Frage.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mrs. Harvey.
Here.
Mr. Ingracia.
Here.
And Mrs. Jewett and Mrs. Santos are absent.
All here? Great, thank you. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
For a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are going into executive session for pending and anticipated litigation of contract negotiation and there are matters in attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, you have to start up here.
So read that first.
You need, because it's a walk-on, right? It's not on the agenda.
So I'm going to start from the first line.
You need to say you have an addition to the agenda.
Okay, I have an addition to the agenda. We're going to appoint the Board of Education vacancy. As of February 22nd, the Board of Education meeting, a volunteer was appointed to fill the open Board of Education vacancy. Unfortunately, unforeseen personal obligations prevent the appointee from giving the Board of Education the time and focus this position deserves, and she resigned prior to taking the seat. The 3 seats remaining candidates were interviewed in open session on February board meeting, each of whom would be an excellent appointee, were contacted and affirmed their interest and the willingness to serve. In a closed session this evening, the board has come to a consensus, and at this time I would like to nominate Jennifer Vinces-Chua. Her background in mental health, education, and experience is well suited, and her commitment to the families and the expertise in education. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing that there's no discussion, Ms. Karen Bishop-Johnson, will I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Agliaro,
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo,
Yes.
Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia.
Yes.
All yeses, motion passes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And you have to say,
Okay, we have to make an amendment to,
also, you need to tell everybody she'll be sworn in April pending her criminal background check.
okay, so Mrs. Vinces-Chua will be sworn in pending your background check and fingerprints on April's meeting. I know you want to run up here right now and help out, but all right. We have to make an amendment to tonight's meeting. Mrs. Harvey has to leave early, so we are going to start with the budget at this time.
Okay. Oops, we're going up. So Aaron, the presentation of tentative budget presentation.
My paper.
You want to do that? Okay. Ernie's actually first. So make it out of your
Yeah, I
way.
was gonna say. So, I think you all remember Ernie Turner. He's been working with the district for, what, 6, 10 years? How, longer? Longer, as a financial consultant, budget developer. He has also been in that role with us in the short time we've been here. So Ernie's going to kick us off.
Good evening, everyone. This is my 4th public board meeting that I've made presentations at describing what the financial condition of the district has been this past year. So this is the 4th time, and then I've also met with board committees, several board committees, discussion as well, too. So this has been an ongoing situation now for quite a while. Can everyone hear me?
There's people streaming.
Or people at home, all right. So again, I just want to remind everyone that this issue about the financial situation of the district was raised last August, is when it became apparent that when the actual expenditures for the district were suddenly being realized and the fiscal constraints on the budget as it was constructed last year had created a situation that required us to do a budget modification in October. All right, so at that time, that budget modification that took place was able to adjust the budget to absorb the additional costs, but they were done with one-time fixes in the budget. It wasn't sustainable. So now, as a result of many years of very strict monetary control, and it happened over a number of years, and trying to be cost-conscious, trying to be frugal, trying to be aware of the concerns of taxpayers within the community, the district maintained a very strict control on any tax increases from year to year. Unfortunately, what happens when that occurs is that if the expenses for the district actually exceed the 2% cap, which is what has been done traditionally in the past here in the district, that additional cost wound up meaning that expenses within the operating budget had to be reduced. And it put a severe restriction on the operations of the school district. This had a compounding effect over a number of years that has resulted into the situation that we arrive at here at this moment. I personally think that this would have happened sooner if it wasn't for the situation that was presented as a result of the COVID pandemic, because during the time of the COVID pandemic, there was federal funding, a number of grants that the district received that helped the financial situation that no longer exist. That's gone. All right, and in October, when again we had to do the reworking of the budget, we had to call upon the use of interest from the referendum account. We had to use extraordinary aid, again, which is special education aid, and use it in the current year instead of letting it flow to the subsequent year. And then we also had to do a 5-year lease purchase for technology that we had to use with the payments starting in the subsequent year in order to be able to close what appeared to be a financial gap. Again, this was, again, one-time situations that required us to address the situation immediately, but is not sustainable. It's important to keep in mind, too, that there's a thing called bank cap in the operations of a school district. What bank cap means is that you're allowed to go up 2% on your tax levy. And if there is a waiver, either for enrollment or for health care, and you have the ability to raise your taxes above that 2%, if you choose not to use it, that increase, that allowance, that waiver that's available to the school district winds up going into what's called bank cap. And bank cap then is an accumulation of taxing authority for the school district to raise taxes, to raise revenues, to address increased expenses within the school district over the years. But those waivers, those additional bank cap authorities that were available were not used. So it accumulated over time to where right now there's $1.3 million in bank cap authority for the district.
Mr. Turner, I'm so sorry. I'm guessing people are going to want to watch this later. Would you please keep to the mic so people streaming can hear you?
Sure. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm worried that they're not.
Shall I face this way?
I'm just worried they're not catching half of what you're saying.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, very good. All right, so basically what it is that you have bank cap available, and that's what's being proposed in the budget right now, is using that bank cap, but in effect what it's doing is allowing you to catch up for past years as well too, because the 2% tax levy, the dollar amount that represents, is not enough money to be able to absorb the increase in costs from year to year. So as a result, you have the bank cap right now. That is the option available to the board right now to be able to start to build that financial foundation that you need to have to allow the district to be sustainable in the next year and every year going out. No more one-time fixes. This is a step in the right direction to build that foundation so that you're not stressed in your budget now and going forward into the future. It's a shame this has to happen this way, but this is the condition that has been presented to us at this point in time. I should note that I work in a number of other school districts, assisting them and consulting with them on their finances, and you're not alone. This is something that's happening in many school districts right now. There are a lot of tough decisions that need to be made, but the financial conditions as presented are what they are. And you have to face up to the reality of the situation and face up to the truth of the situation. It's something that you the expenses that are in the budget, and this is a budget that a lot of time and effort and thought went into it by your superintendent and business administrator, and keeping in mind the taxpayers as well too, and the burden that they have to pay. So keeping all of that in mind, trying to balance all of that with the needs of the school district is a very strenuous task. You know, there were a lot of late nights that people worked in effort to be able to pull this budget together to address the needs of the district. And this is something that will be ongoing as you go forward in subsequent years as well too. But I just want to emphasize that you are not alone. This is not unusual. I'm working in other districts that had to make very, very difficult decisions. There's one particular district that had to lay off a number of staff to be able to balance their budget. And these are tough times for school districts at this point in time. So again, what we want to do is to create an environment for the students to succeed. You want also to allow your superintendent to be able to work with the board and the community to implement her vision, her educational vision for the district, and to be able to implement that and maintain it to the benefit of all the students in the school district. And I think that what is being considered tonight and this budget that is being presented for the board to approve and then subsequently sent to the county superintendent for final approval is a big step in the right direction. And I think that this is, even though it's a tough decision, but it's something that's absolutely necessary at this point in time. All right, so thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to use this.
You're going to use yours?
Oh, it's just, I can't see that. I can't see it. So thank you, Arnie, because I do think, you know, from our perspective, and I think anybody who's been following along knows, Karen's been here just 2 months. I'm here just over 6 months. Our perspective is not the perspective of people who have lived here all their lives or whatever, but the reality is, even in that short period, it's become painfully obvious that we have to, as Ernie said, build a financial foundation that'll be sustainable. We both started here at a time when it was in crisis mode, right? And now we're moving in a direction where we can turn our attention, finally, to enhancing the educational environment for our students. And that's kind of where our focus is. With this budget and now. I can't, you know, I appreciate all the years you've been here and all the budgets you've built, Ernie, and I value that you're saying, right, that this has been a long time coming. You've said it every time you've come to the microphone. It is a lot, right? I wish we did do it over a period of years, but now we're at a place where if we're going to move forward doing what we say we're going to do, these are our recommendations. Aaron, if you go forward. Karen, I don't know how to move yours forward. Perfect. Perfect. All right, so the first slide you see is the actual budget process. Typically, and you'll hear this when I get to our budget timeline, you would have gotten to hear this back in January when we start talking about the budget, but Karen hadn't started at that point, right? But the budget is the financial expression, if you will, of the district's educational goals. We take the vision of the district that you set and we turn that into dollars, basically. So, Aaron, you can keep going. The vision of the district is posted pretty much everywhere. We put it up here again for you to see, those of you who are here, those of you who are at home. But that idea of inspiring learners to explore, inquire, collaborate, right? The idea that we are going to prepare our students for the world is a big part, believe it or not, of building a budget. at this moment in time, up until us, right, for the previous years, and you're going to hear about this, we've had this priority, right? We've had this focus. The budget goals are not significantly different, but how the budget was implemented is what is different. Our recommendation is what I think is different. In Ernie's words, a lot. Erin, next. Thank you. I'm not here yet, but thanks. The actual budget flow process, and so you know we also did follow this process. We worked through the chain of command for input. Karen and I, and Patty before her, we met with the principals, with the Teachers Association, with board members, community members, and we get to listen, right? What's important in the budget? The curriculum committee reported for 2 months in a row about the meetings where the principals and our special services director talked about the successes and the challenges over the last few years. All of the things that were cut from the general budget. Some may be put into other places, like Ernie said, grants or interest or wherever, but out of our district budget. And we'll talk more about that. We are, believe it or not, only at the second phase of this process. I know it seems like we should be a lot further. Tonight is the presentation of the tentative budget and the board's approval of that budget to go to the county executive. That doesn't mean this is the approved budget. And I need people to understand that. I keep getting asked that question. I want people to know that. What we've done so far, what we've recommended, presented to the board so far, is a budget that supports what we've heard that this community values, right, and what they expect. We have presented a budget that restores some of those things removed over time from the operating budget into monies that no longer exist. So we're only at this tentative space, right, in creating a budget that supports that student achievement and skills. When we're done here tonight, regardless of outcome, believe it or not, it goes to the county on Wednesday. That is the state mandated deadline. After county approval, then we have the opportunity as the board and you as the public to continue to look, to continue to revise. After we get that approval and we know these numbers are what they would consider real, right, in the state budget software, the tax impact can be developed, we can confirm the tax levy, all of those kinds of things. There is also a public hearing. There's opportunities for the public to be heard on the budget as well before that final vote in April. So this isn't it. We're only step 2. And then the executive county superintendent Wednesday. As soon as we get that approval, we'll know the tax impact. We'll make sure everybody else knows that as well, right? And then we have to, before and during that public hearing, consider community input. The board will meet probably many times, not just in committee, to talk about it. And then hopefully on April 25th, adopt a budget, whatever that budget is, by a majority of the board that meets the needs of all of these constituencies. Okay? Erin, you can go forward. This is the budget timeline we're working with. So you know, this is pretty unusual. Typically, we would develop a budget calendar in June at the Board of Education retreat, and the board process, the budget process, begins in July, right? So when interim superintendent Rovtar was here and Patty Rogers was starting, right? When they opened that July budget, they realized that there were significant shortfalls, as you know, and some of our budget timeline looks very different than maybe it would have otherwise, right? because we would start building that expense side for February and await the development of the revenue side here where we are now in March. Ernie talked to you about in October the need to readopt and the approval of additional appropriations and revenues in our current budget. Patty got a great start identifying the issues that would affect the development of our 2025 budget, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. But with her resignation in November, with Karen starting in January, again, our timeline has really been shrunk. I want to make sure I take a minute, and I know, Dory, you got to go, but just a minute, to give kudos to Karen Bishop Johnson. You heard Patty, amazing, still amazing, love her, miss her, talk to her. We've had to call her at least 10,000 times. What Karen has been able to accomplish in 2 months is mind-boggling to me. Her understanding of where we are, of the budget, by talking to everybody, has amazed me. And I think as you hear her talk even tonight, you'll see all of the areas where she shines in such a short period. And thank you, because it's been 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We know that, and we appreciate you. So our timeline, again, starting in October, and what's happened each month. In February, you heard us talk about this last month, and from our committee reports. Erin, you can move forward. We did have the budget addressed from the governor. We did get our state aid announcements. And here we are tonight with the presentation of the tentative budget, just again for the timeline to the county office Wednesday, public hearing in April, the user-friendly budget posted April 27th, just 2 days we have after that approval to post that for the world. And then May 9th, we'll be back for a one-item agenda, our staff reappointment agenda. Based on that budget, there will be a second regular meeting in May. Erin, you can go ahead. I'm going to turn it over to Karen to actually get into some of our budget talk.
So I just want to tell you a little bit about collecting data for these expenditures. We look at salary projections. That's always a big driver of this budget. We look at all the employee benefits, the estimate in the healthcare, the medical, the dental. What are our sick and vacation payouts going to be? It's an estimate. How much are we going to be paying for the PERS pension contribution, tuition reimbursements? We also look at our out-of-district placements, and we try to conservatively budget, but also being cautious. Transportation, that's always a big driver. The CPI this year is 5.8%, so we budget for all of our children being transported, all of our students who are going to be attending ESY, and then also all the out-of-district students. We look at the enrollment projections to see how many students we're going to have per class and how many teachers and aides and whatnot we're going to need. We look at our debt service. We met with building principals and others to talk about what they wanted in the budget, what we could do. You know, we did look to just everything like that. And we also discussed the statement of priorities, how we're going to support these student programs. And that's the major way we do that, expenditures. Gathering. Do you?
Ask Karen to go forward. I think
We're caught up.
Yep, caught up. I think we're caught up. I hope we're caught up. So this slide is important for everybody to understand because the board's role is oversight of the budget process, right? So as a Board of Education, the conversations in each committee, right, happen around the budget. In the Operations and Finance Committee, believe it or not, they go line by line, more than 500 lines, by the way, and ask questions, figure out what it is that we're trying to accomplish here, right? So what has to be funded? What are our district goals? What do we need to improve student achievement? What can the community afford, right? This budget calendar, as I have already talked about, was different this year, but will return with our June retreat for next year. We also have the important role, the board, to help the community understand, right, what this budget means, what it represents, what we expect, what we've heard the community expects for education in Watchung. And then obviously, oversight, the biggest responsibility, right? Does the final budget support the student achievement? Does that final budget throughout the year, and you hear every month, right? There's a secretary report, there's the financials every month. That's the board's oversight beyond approval of that final budget. I just want to, you heard me thank Karen. I'm going to say Board of Education. Again, short amount of time, but thank you. You have spent, and the community should know, that you have spent hours reviewing these recommendations, literally until 9, 10, the other night, midnight, asking questions and getting clarification. And even though we still have, between now and the public hearing, to refine the final budget, the tentative budget being presented tonight represents a thoughtful and purposeful process. It's our best effort to stabilize the finances of the district and prioritize restoring not just staff, but programming, and to also be able to enhance that curriculum instruction and assessment. Erin, you can move forward. The budget objectives for this year are very similar to what they have been. Support teaching and learning in accordance with the district vision. Maintain current class sizes. This was very important, and you'll hear more about that in what we are looking to restore to the general budget. I have understood in my short time here that that has been a priority to keep class sizes low, and that was one of the objectives that we worked on. Additionally, restore, again, some of those fundamental positions and programs cut from previous budgets or funded through grants and interest or those private donations, money that's no longer available but has to be replaced, right, in order to have those things that we expect. And finally, and maybe for Karen's part, the most important, to manage the budget efficiently and seek to reduce expenditures. I know, I mean, I'll move out of the way so you can.
Right. I mean, there's not that much to say about that, but always watching the pricing, making sure that we've checked every invoice, you know, nothing comes past us that may or may not have been needed or wasn't already requisitioned that I haven't seen, and we've made sure we have enough money on those accounts. So we're very careful. Ricky, our buildings and grounds supervisor, he is great at getting quotes, checking, you know, calling his contacts, making sure. So even though there's not many of us in the business office, we're extremely diligent about checking, you know, every cost. So we can. I am? Okay. So meeting these objectives in 24-25, we are maintaining current class sizes or recommending that we do so. We are recommending to maintain all staffing levels within the budget. We are maintaining the current level of programming for transportation, clubs, and sports. We continue and expand professional learning and collaboration initiatives. We're prioritizing curriculum, instruction, and assessment to improve academic outcomes, and strategic stabilization of operations, including staffing, support services, and purchase services. Okay. So according to statute, the board can raise the school tax levy by up to 2% plus allowable adjustments as determined by enrollment and health care cost increases plus the bank cap. The enrollment adjustment, which comes before the 2%, is added to the tax levy before anything else. The enrollment adjustment comes from numbers that are produced on October 15th and projected by the New Jersey Department of Ed. That doesn't mean that it's the same today, but on October 15th, these were the numbers, and there are no changes we can make on that software for that. That's where those are. Then you add those to the budget, and then you get a healthcare adjustment, and that's anything over and above the state healthcare increases. So this year, I think it's small percentage that we received. So that comes next, and then you can then request for bank cap after that. So that's the order that it goes in. It's the enrollment adjustment, then the 2% of last year's levy, then the healthcare adjustment before bank cap. And if this is how that it would lay out. So you see your current tax levy, which is right now where you are since last year. There's that enrollment adjustment. And now you subtotal that to that 13 million, 2% on that, healthcare, and right before the bank cap is where you would be. So we looked at our budget and our expenditures, meeting all of the goals that I just told you about, and then we needed an additional $874 to be able to do those programs. So in the end, we're requesting of the 1,300,000 and I'm not sure, I can't remember all the rest of that, but it was 1,000,003 available bank cap. We're requesting 810,874, and that leaves 507,199 for next year. So that is what we're requesting. That balances our budget, and that meets the goals that we've stated that we were going to attempt to meet. Okay.
So last year, the Board of Education chose not to take the enrollment adjustment or health care adjustment. The budget was limited at 2%, and then the additional taxing authority that was available last year then becomes part of what's known as bank cap. And that's part of what the increase is being used for this year to go above the 2% tax levy cap. Bank cap adjustment, each year if you raise taxes by lower than the allowable tax levy, which is calculated by the state, the difference between the maximum tax levy, the cap, and what you use as tax levy becomes banked, like in a savings account. Bank cap expires after 3 years. If unused, it is returned to the state, not the taxpayer. Watchung has not taken advantage of this and have left millions of dollars that could have been used to grow the budget and been an investment in the schools. By not taking what was available each year and artificially limiting to the 2% levy, the budget has not grown at the allowable rate. The fund balance needed to build the subsequent year's budgets has been invaded each year, creating a shortfall that recently has been covered by federal grants and bond interest, and there have been no investment in the schools. With the loss of the grants and bond interest, just to break even, have to take now all at once what could have been spread over several years.
Is that right? Aaron, is it back one slide? Yep, there you go.
That's it. So just as a reminder, if you recall what I spoke about earlier, it was back in October that we had to rework the budget. And at that time, based on the information that I was working on, I was projecting a 13% increase in the tax levy at that time. And now what's being presented tonight is somewhat less than that, right? But at the time, based on what appeared to be what the financial outlook was going to be for this current year, I had mentioned to the board and committee that it looked like it was going to be a 13% increase.
So, one thing that you can note on this slide is that we did receive additional state aid this year. It's an increase of $209,291. That's was really appreciated. We were really lucky to get that. And everything else on there, I think Ernie has gone over. Local revenues, if, just to let you know that that is our interest that we're earning. That is rent, if we rent out our facilities. That is our technical fee, technology fee that we charge $25 a student for Chromebooks. That's all in a local revenue, really mainly made up of interest this year. The special revenue grants in Fund 20, those are all your local grants, your IDEA, your pre-K IDEA. And that can only be used very specific, so that's not in the operating budget. And then debt service is the referendum debt service. Okay. Aaron, I think we're ready to move up. Yep. So this, a little bit hard to see, but this is the major drivers of the expenditures for this year. The narrow part of the pie there, that's all of our student services, clubs, and athletics. You then have transportation, which is the regular and special education. You have the administration, which is salaries, professional services, other purchase services, Board of Ed memberships and workshops are all in that category. In plant operations, you have salaries, supplies, repairs, and plant contracts. In employee benefits, it's health, dental, disability, workers' comp, PERS. And in special education, you have salaries, supplies, and purchase services, out-of-district tuition. And in regular instructional programs, it's salaries, supplies, and purchase services. Purchase services is, it's just basically having a person provide the service that's not in district. So any outside purchase service.
See the, so the big drivers for what? Regular, hard to read.
It's hard to read.
So just the big purple pie is regular instructional programs.
Let me see if I can make it a little bigger.
Sky blue is employee benefits. Orange is special ed. Plant is purple. Administration is the green. Transportation maroon. And student services the blue.
Yeah. So going from right to left, starting at the top, zero, it's 0% because it's 90, it's not even 100,000. But that transportation is 6%, the admin is 7%, the plant is 8%, the benefits are 20%, special education 25%, and regular instructional is 34%. That's okay. Ready for the next slide? So significant increases in these fixed expenditures are mainly, at the top are the salaries and health benefits. The salaries increase 2.8%, but that also includes your FICA tax, restored positions, ESY, overtime, substitutes, and any salary adjustment. And that total was $765,000. The benefits, medical, prescription, which is estimated to go up 11% from last year. Dental, workers' comp, retirement, and Social Security, $375,488. So just the total of those two alone is $1.1 million. Student transportation, up $61,507. And the total increase in other fixed operating costs like property insurance, the outside services that we have contracts for, pest control, things like that, utilities is almost 100,000, and those are increases over last year.
I have the part of the presentation to talk about how, Karen, I can't make this move to catch you up. Oh, there it goes. Thank you. Sorry, I was like, uh-oh, what's happening now? And this is the good part. This presentation will be up on the website tonight. It'll be public. So no worries, you'll be able to also see this. But this is, the next couple slides I'm going to talk about are representative of how you build the budget, right? We told you we met with the principals. We meet with buildings and grounds. We meet with IT. We meet with special education. We listen to the community. We look at what is valued, all right? What you see on this restore list, each of these items were removed from the general budget and either not funded or funded through grants, COVID federal dollars, bond interest, or private funds. The grants, COVID funding, and the bond interest have all been expended, and at this time, as of this moment, no private funds have been committed. So we're stuck here, right? Now the first two, I'm actually going to work up from the bottom because Ernie talked a lot about this. In October, when the budget was developed and limited, the extended school year program was not included. That is our special education program that's required by the state. It's listed in students' individual education plans. That was the first thing restored. Followed by Chromebooks. The district has made a really strong commitment, a one-to-one commitment for our students. And it's second grade and fifth grade, right? Those get refreshed. That's when students get those Chromebooks at their transition years. In the earlier years, there are iPads, right? Developmentally a different program. But the Chromebooks, as Ernie already talked about, were not budgeted for. In the previous budget, they were provided by a private donor. So we did need to restore it because to do it last year, right, we took out a lease, and now we'll be paying that lease for 4 years instead of restoring it and looking, I don't want to steal your thunder, but looking for lease purchase programs are the ways to pay it. Now, going back up to the top. This goes back to our budget objectives, what people expressed were important to them. Class size, right? So the Bayberry PE teacher was paid only at 0.7 in the budget. The rest of that salary was paid through grants, not in the budget. So now that that money is gone, if you only had a 0.7 PE teacher, in some sections of PE, you'd have to double up. And I don't think anybody wants 40 kids in a PE class. And I have Ms. Fickner sitting right here, and she can tell you that nobody wants that. Not the teachers, not the principal, not the kids, not the parents. Bayberry School Counselor, same thing. We all want that full-time counselor, but for budgeting purposes, only half of that salary was in the budget. The rest of it was grant funded. Now that the grant's gone, does that mean we only need a half-time counselor? Absolutely not. So again, another position that we hear, all of you, value, know the importance of, and that's another recommendation for restoration. You added a teacher in the last year for class size reduction. You have an enrollment bubble going through Bayberry. I think we've seen it. We worked again with Ms. Fickner while we were building the budget to look at the enrollment at every class, at every section, at every grade level, to see what needed to be adjusted, what class sizes would go up to if we didn't include a teacher, you know, all of those kinds of things. And the decision was made to recommend to maintain that teacher, to maintain that class size reduction. That's a full-time position, and again, that was a position paid for out of bond interest, not in the budget. Needs to be restored. We are also recommending a librarian for Bayberry School. Bayberry has not had a full-time certified librarian in 4 years, maybe more. We only know 4 because that's how long we've been here. But without that, you have had a library clerk who does the book checkouts, I think does the very best possible, working under the certificate of the middle school librarian who recently retired, right? There have been no updates to that library curriculum. There's not an opportunity for articulation between the librarians. And again, what we hope for students. You all voted a referendum that included STEAM, included additional resources in the library, collaborative space. Now, with the restoration of a librarian, you have one at each school. You have your SOAR teacher, your gifted and talented teacher, and your STEAM teacher, plus the STEAM teachers here at Valley View, able to work together to create a comprehensive program for our students. So that recommendation is in. The school resource officer, and they'll be here a little later. I actually called them and asked them to come later when we switch the agenda, so make sure we give them like extra love when they do get here, because they're late for them. But the school resource office position was added last year, also paid for with that same bond interest. Don't know how, but we're committed to keeping this position. It's been very successful, right? Very successful, even more than I would have understood when I was hired. So again, that's restored to the budget, right? Not from outside funding. I think we all know that professional learning has been funded through the grants and the COVID money. With the end of that and the reappropriations in October, we had to freeze those opportunities for staff. We did keep the already committed to Conquer Math, the already committed to IDE, professional learning around personalization of instruction and coaching into instruction, but it was grant funded. We want our staff to be able to be developed. We want them to have those opportunities to grow in their own learning, because we all know that impacts our students, right? So we restored that to the general budget instead of the whims of whatever grant funding we might get. Curriculum writing. Curriculum writing has happened based on, the requirements that have come from the state for updates. At this time, we're really behind language arts, math, right? We've restored that curriculum writing to the budget, and those projects, if approved, would start right away and in the summer, so we can begin updating curriculum, which again is a pathway to enhanced academic success. The Bayberry report card revisions are important because at every year the state has standards. There are skills, right, listed in those standards, and we need to make sure our report card aligns with what we're teaching. So a really important project that's been put off, and again, if recommended and funded, will be able to happen this summer, so we're ready for next school year. Those are restorations, right? Meaning things that we have, things that we wanted to keep, but we're not in the budget, even though they're currently in the district. There are no additions, except we have to bring them into the budget to pay for them. In addition, Aaron, thank you. In addition, and again, we had lots of requests. We couldn't fund every request, but there were some additions that we thought were pretty critical. Our social worker position is 0.8, shared between the two schools. The recommendation is to make that position full-time. I think that's for obvious reasons. Transportation, not a big conversation for tonight, but I did commit to fixing transportation this year. Be ready for September. You can look forward to some town hall meetings on the conversations. We've already on our side begun those conversations with the high school, with neighboring districts, with our association. But one of the things that I think we recognized right away, even on my first day, the disconnect by not having the same person who is running transportation on all three tiers, high school, middle school, and elementary, the disconnect between having a different software between our district and the high school district, and the disconnect between having all different people involved in the routing instead of one professional who does this for a living was pretty obvious. So that is an addition. It would be a shared service with the high school, having the same transportation coordinator and the same software all the way through. You'll also see some salary adjustments in these additions. Not, obviously, if the total amount's $90,000, not a lot of salary adjustment, but really critical. A one-time, I don't know why it says once, but a one-time adjustment in our custodial maintenance staff. This was planned years ago. There's a whole beautiful chart. It was implemented for the first year, never happened again. So this allows our custodial maintenance staff to actually be hired at steps, not just willy-nilly, to be paid a living wage that is not minimum wage, ladies and gentlemen, if you can imagine that. We have some of our staff who has worked here for 24 years, 28 years. I think you would be shocked. I don't know, tonight is the night to get into that detail, but we'd be happy to share that with you. There's also an adjustment in our payroll and benefits seat. I think you know I'm on the third person just in the 6 months I've been here, and it wasn't stable before I came. There were too many jobs on that desk, right? Transportation was part of that desk. It's also the executive secretary to the business administrator, just receiving resumes and interviewing and looking at the salaries. We needed to make an adjustment up, and we will also be rewriting the job description for that seat. And a salary adjustment for our business administrator. Unlike the rest of the staff who might have multiple year contracts, Karen's contract is year to year. She came in the middle of the year with no negotiations, nothing, just with what Patty was receiving. So this is in preparation for developing that contract and for her contract for next year. And again, by the number, you can see we're not talking millions of dollars here. And then finally, Aaron, maintain. So many conversations in the community, right? So many conversations amongst staff, amongst our coaches, about sports and clubs and the importance of it, right? Just the same way we decided as a community we didn't make change to transportation this year, and we'll have those conversations. Sports and clubs were maintained at the level that they are in the contract. We didn't cut it. So you'll still have, right, the sports and the transportation and the equipment that's required at Valley View with all the sports you currently have. We'll have all the clubs that we currently have at Valley View and Bayberry, although I will say, no, Bayberry is supplemented by the PTO. So you might have some different clubs, but we won't have any less. There are no cuts. This is maintenance, right? And when you see this, please know, and I brought up my legal pad so you would know, because I kept a running total. We couldn't even begin to put all of the requests in. We made a very thoughtful decision not to do everything in 1 year. I'll give you an example of textbook adoptions. We've talked about that, right? That the books are out of date. But in talking with the principals, with our sending districts, right, our neighboring districts, in order to identify, right, appropriate materials, to pilot those materials, to adopt them, to do the professional learning, we didn't believe, be ready to start, right, to have all that money spent by next June. And that is the requirement of the bank cap. If we're taking it, has to be spent by next June, right? If we couldn't do it, we didn't request it. And that's just one example. Again, maybe at the public hearing, we'll spend more time. If you're interested in hearing about the other requests, the board has heard those, some of our ideas for the future moving forward, and why we didn't request the full bank cap. It's not just because of the sticker shock, right? And there is that. But we also knew that there are more things that we'll want to do. We're going to have our strategic plan conversations. The community's going to have the opportunity to talk about, right, what we should be doing. So we did want to make sure we saved some of the money and bank cap for the future use, not to use it all currently. And again, the other piece to this, and I can't see my notes, but that's okay. Maybe it's over here. The other thing is, right? Ernie said it. I'm going to repeat it. You're going to hear it over and over again between now and April. I know you will. So I'll just say it. I'll be the one to start it. Right? We know this is a lot in 1 year. We know it. But we've heard what the community values and expects, and we really did go through a very purposeful process to try and restore the things removed from prior year's budget and to try and honor what the community expects for the children of Watchung. You know, Ernie talked a lot about how many years he's been here and what we've gone through under the available tax levy. You can see the pressure on the budget. You can see, we talked about those Band-Aids a lot this year, even in my short time. But without using the money, we really can't consider all the things that we're saying are important, right? That we've all said are important for the education of our children. So I will start that piece of the conversation for the future. I think that's my last slide. Karen, you have one more slide? Yes, Aaron? Is there one more? Oh, there you go. Karen? No, that's you. I think you should just tell them.
Last slide, there is a public hearing Thursday, April 25th, 2024. We'd like to thank you for the continued support of the education of our children. Please contact me if you have any questions. That's my email. I'll be happy at any point to discuss anything with you, any detail.
And Ernie, I think, wanted to.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And just to finish up, at the last board meeting, Mr. Ingrassia raised a very important question that I just wanted to expand on real quickly, because he was talking about the board secretary's report and what the funds available were on that report. There's a thing in school district budgets called budgeted fund balance, and that is the equivalent to a revenue on a school district budget. So each year, whatever surplus that you have left over after you fund your reserves, if you have enough money to fund your reserves, that surplus becomes budgeted fund balance in the subsequent budgeting year. The budgeted fund balance for the current year that we're in right now is $801,000. All right, so starting for next year, in the next budget cycle, we have to try to maintain the surplus and the budgeted fund balance as close as possible to that $800,000, because every reduction below that $800,000 is a reduction in revenue, and you're starting from a lower position that you have to make up. All right, so this is an important point for us to keep in mind, because when we reworked the budget last October, that was something I know I was thinking of at that time in doing the modifications to the budget that were necessary, because we couldn't go into another year with zero budgeted fund balance, because we would have been $800,000 in the hole right from the get-go. All right, so I just wanted to make that clear, Mr. Ingrassia, so you knew what the theory was behind that.
Thank you, Ernie. Could I just ask you one other question since we're up here? Since you're up here. So this is a 12% tax levy increase that's being proposed, right? But it's a 7% expense increase. Could you elaborate just briefly? There's not much more to say on than that, but it's a, because of the way the resources and the revenues are a 12%, what we're proposing is a 12% tax levy increase,
Right.
to the taxpayer.
Yes.
But that's covering a 7% expense increase in our budget.
Right. And if you remember when we reworked the budget last October, you know, we had to do it to close that gap. All right, so in effect, those one-time fixes that we had to put in there, those are gone now. Those weren't sustainable. So we still have to fill that gap that was there initially when it became obvious to us that there was a shortfall in the budget.
And as we received the request for 12% tax levy increase, we're not saying that our expenses have gone up 12%. That's what we're covering 7%.
That and in addition to other expenses that were part of the regular operating budget that weren't funded by the previous budget. All right, it was larger gap than that, if you remember, you know, because we spoke about it at length in committee, you know, and we revealed what the shortfall was. So it wasn't just an increase, it was also a shortfall in the operating budget, a combination of the two.
You weren't in the committee meeting that I was in this past week, so that's why I wanted to ask you that question also.
No, I'm happy to answer it.
Thank you.
I can just give you a little bit of extra explanation. The 7% is the increase from last year, but those last year numbers that we're comparing them against have those positions in the operating budget, not in the grant, not paid through the interest. You can't see that in there. But if they had been in there, this would have been straight 7, but all those positions weren't in there. They weren't in there, and that's back in October. So you can't really do it that way, compare it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So you're gonna, because we're all out of order on the agenda.
Oh,
So we're going straight into a roll call, right?
Mr.
No discussion.
President, I just wanted to thank the board for adjusting the agenda tonight, and I would like to make a motion to move 4 operation items now. They're listed on the agenda as 4, adoption of the tentative budget for the 2024-2025 school year, 5, adjustment for enrollment, $436,150, 6, adjustment for healthcare costs, $75,845, and 7, adjustment for bank cap, $810,874. Second?
For a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. I just wanted to add that I appreciated the presentation. And, you know, we had a recommendation last year that it was only a 2% increase. And so there was some criticism of that last year. And as you can see, we do rely very heavily on the recommendations that we receive as a board. And so I just wanted to share, not to you know, go too far into any disagreements, but just concerns or questions that I think it would be helpful to the public to know what was discussed or covered. Just to say, the question was asked, are there any cuts that can be made? And the answer was no. I was concerned about having this size of an increase, but with no contribution to the capital reserve or to the maintenance reserve. And it was explained that that just wasn't possible, even with this increase. It's something to go for next year. Maybe in June we'll find out. Some good news there. So, you know, I do appreciate that in the board process it was noted, because we've seen this in our training also, that affordability for the township is a consideration that we as board members are asked to make. And I think maybe an expanded discussion on that would be helpful at another time. I know this is just the tentative vote here on the tentative budget, but I think that that's something that, you know, I've seen the formula, there's mentions in the formula that the state may use when they come up with our state aid. So there's some based on median income or home value, what you could say that the town can afford in a formula. I do think that economic conditions are something that we have to consider when there's, whether it's a pandemic or an inflationary period that we're in now. And I think a third component, and there may be many others, but the for affordability for the township would be that we're competing with other towns for the desirability of the tax rate when people are buying their homes. So I just think that it would be helpful as for board members when we talk about our role and responsibility to look at the affordability for the township, that we come up with maybe a more robust discussion on that. And other than that, I just would point out last year we had interim positions, and we've already pointed out the calendar has been impacted by people that are just new to the district and things, and I think that's totally understandable. And so I wouldn't even really point to last year's documentation that the board received as a goal. I would say maybe the year before, if we look in our board packets, we had the budget, the printable budget, the 80-page budget that we could look at. And I've heard that the operations committee went through line by line this year, but we didn't. All board members didn't see that level of detail, and so the sooner before the final budget, if we could have that to actually see the budget, I would feel more comfortable when that vote comes. I think there was a bit of new information that came out recently when it comes to the enrollment adjustment and the healthcare adjustment. And it's been mentioned that maybe that's been funds that were left on the table, so to speak, in previous years. And I think it would be helpful to have just a simple spreadsheet or something to show what adjustments, because we're usually looking at the 2% cap and whether we've taken that or what bank cap we have available from that. But I think it would be helpful, and I mentioned it, I think, in the committee, that if we could find a history of what those adjustments that were available that weren't recommended to be taken and so weren't taken would be helpful. I think the anticipated enrollment is something that we normally have in the tentative budget presentation, and I think it's just helpful for us and the public to see what the anticipated enrollment is. And I noticed it's not on our agendas anymore either, but we used to have just a report showing the enrollment for each grade level, so I think it would be helpful to have that. And that's really, I just wanted to share those points and some questions. And if I was wrong in any of that, it's correct, right? There's no cut. The question was asked, can any cuts be made this year? And it was no, right? And we'll maybe find out in June about capital reserve or maintenance reserve.
And the only thing, just as a reminder about the enrollment, it was on every month, and it was a change of maybe one student at a time, and there wasn't a reason to report it. This, and Karen, I think, mentioned it in the presentation, the enrollment for the budget is generated by the state. It's a projection by the state, not our actual daily enrollment.
Yeah.
Two different.
I'm just going by the budget presentations from
Right.
past years. The tentative budget showed the anticipated enrollment for each
Well,
grade.
and we will do that because that supports the requests from Mrs. Fichtner, right, for maintaining that staff, and why we could do some things and not other things that were requested.
And between now and the next meeting, we'll all, as board members, see the full, I won't say 80 pages, however many pages
is
it is,
it that they get
but the
after the
printable
county?
budget.
It's a lot, yeah, it's a lot of pages.
Right.
You will get it. They have a little bit of time to approve it. It gets sent to them on Wednesday, so we should get it back soon.
Okay. And that in past years has been then posted on the public website also. So I
Has to
don't
be.
think there's the user-friendly one, but the full printable one is something that I think was not, when we readopted the budget, I don't think that's been posted.
Oh, so I can answer that, or Ernie can step up, because we asked that question. After the budget's approved in the budget software, when we do that and it goes in May, even though we reapproved and made reappropriations and whatever, We do that with the approval of the county and the state, but you can't reopen the software. They don't let us do that.
Okay. But we'll have it for our next,
For you, you'll have it.
before our next meeting.
Oh, well, we're hoping well before, as soon as we get the approvals.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just want to thank you, Dr. Glazer and Karen, for putting together such a really clear and thoughtful presentation for community. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to go into a roll call for Mrs. Harvey's
4 things.
C4 to C7,
C4 to C7.
just to check. Okay. Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Frage,
Yes.
and Mrs. Agliaro.
Yes.
All yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Lori, thank you. Good luck. Good night. Thank you. And we'll continue. What? That was the tentative budget.
Okay, cool.
So now I see that Chief Anderly and Officer Cuevas and Officer Delinsky have arrived. Thank you for being so patient with us. I did tell the whole community that I put you off. Thanks, Ernie, for being here tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Ernie.
So at this time, I'd like to introduce formally, if you guys will come on up, Chief Scott Anderly of our Watchung Police Department. I don't know if you want to introduce Officer Pete and Officer Mike, but these are our current and potential resource officers, and you missed what I had to say about all of you, but I have not had this position in my previous districts. We work differently, and the partnership has been amazing. So thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Wow. I don't usually need a microphone in a room this size, but I'll use it. So when we started this program and I was selecting an SRO, I put a lot of thought into it because it's a really important position. And when we chose Officer Cuevas, I really thought he was going to make a huge impression on everybody, and I can look around the room and see a lot of head shaking and know that he did. And he got promoted. He's a sergeant, so within our organization, he's going to move to a new position. So when it became time to select another SRO, again, I put a lot of thought into it. And Officer Delinsky, or Officer Mike, as I think he will soon be affectionately known by staff and students, is exactly who I want to see standing outside of my children's school. Mike is a 19-year veteran of our police department. Mike is a very accomplished martial artist. He has a lot of experience in special weapons and tactics on our county SWAT team. You and your children are in very good hands. He also has school-age children himself, so I know he's going to be able to make those connections just like Sergeant Cuevas did. I think this is a real positive. I just thought it was appropriate to, and as did you, Dr. Glazer, to actually put a face to the name before he shows up on day one. I don't think, unless you have any questions, I'm just happy that you gave us the opportunity.
Oh, no, we're, believe me, thrilled. Now, can I say, Officer Pete did make that impression. You cannot go into either of our schools, and I'll say this with both principals here, and not every kid's little face lights up. They high five, they hug you. I couldn't ask for better. Right? Isn't that what we want for our kids, to have that kind of relationship and trust? And Officer Pete will be a loss. We'll do our goodbyes. I know both schools are making that transition. I know, Officer Mike, you'll be just as wonderful, and we'll look forward to welcoming you. If you haven't already heard from the principals how we'll make that transition, we'll work on that together. Do either of you want to say anything? Look at you both are like deer. What kind of policeman are you, deer in the headlights?
I promised him I'd earn my money and do the speaking tonight.
I know. Here comes Officer Pete.
Sure.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Officer Mike, anything? Okay.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have a little bit of onboarding training. We have our own schedules to work out, so it's not going to be an immediate thing, but you'll see a pretty smooth transition. We have a plan in place, and I'll be working with the principals and Dr. Glazer to get that done efficiently and effectively. Any questions for me, or?
Thank you for your service.
Just thank you for everything, truly. It's been terrific. And thanks for waiting and coming late tonight. I know that wasn't fun for any of you.
No problem at all. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so now we're going to go on to superintendent's comments. Any?
Oh, yes, we have our two principals here. I don't know, are you both doing a report tonight? One tag team? What are we doing? All right, so Ms. Fickner, Bayberry School, up first, and then I guess Mrs. Karen Kidd, Valley View School, coming next.
Yes. Good evening. Yes, when you give me middle school content, then I pass it off to Karen. That's so I was going to say real quick, thank you to Officer Pete. He did leave, but Bayberry students are still trying to figure out where his desk is. And it's been like a running joke because we had to move his desk. So it's just really fun. He is a great guy. We're going to miss him in the schools. But we want to wish him good luck in the future. And welcome to our officer, Mike. We can't wait to start with him, so that'll be great. So moving on to what's going on at Bayberry. Our fourth graders put on a spectacular performance of Rats on March 7th. Their hard work and dedication paid off with an outstanding acting and singing by all of our students, and we love that all of the students are included in the play. Thank you to Mrs. Riley, the fourth grade team, and our parent volunteers for their efforts in making this a huge success. The week of March 4th, we celebrated Read Across America with spirit activities and a wide variety of guest readers. It was so great to see parent volunteers. We had police officers come in, the principal and superintendent also read to a bunch of our classes. It was great. We ended the week with a school-wide read-in, which was amazing. Everybody sat in the halls for a quiet 15 minutes at the end of the day. It was really nice. Both schools enjoyed an engaging musical assembly by Jared Campbell on March 13th. Mr. Campbell's uplifting music with a powerful message of kindness and friendship put smiles on so many faces, students and staff at Bayberry and Valley View. So thank you to the PTO for bringing us this anti-bullying assembly. It was a lot of fun. On Thursday, March 14th, staff and community members gathered at the Watchung Arts Center to honor my very own Mrs. DiNardo, Bayberry School Secretary, as one of the remarkable women of Watchung. Mrs. DiNardo also enjoyed an outpouring of appreciation throughout that day with posters, cards, lots of hugs from students and staff. It was a really great day. Trimester 2 ended at Bayberry, and report cards were made available in Genesis on March 15th. The iReady Winter diagnostic scores were shared with parents via the Genesis Parent Portal on March 12th, and parents are encouraged to reach out to their child's teacher if they have any questions. All right, that's it for me. Now I'm going to pass it over to Principal Kidd.
Thanks, Denise.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was going to be here tonight. Thank you, Denise, for passing this off to me. This month's Mountaineer Monday lesson celebrated social awareness in women, specifically integrity, resilience, and courage in honor of Women's History Month. On March 12th, our fifth grade students participated in either the Tea Talk, led by Nurse Sushevsky, or the Donuts for Dudes, led by Coach Leslie. During these events, students viewed a short video on the stages of puberty. The Always Changing and Growing Up program is a nationally researched program that helps boys and girls understand the physical and emotional changes they experience during puberty and acknowledge these changes as a regular part of growth and development. They also learned about the physiology of their bodies and the correct terminology for parts of the reproductive system. In addition, the program helps girls to understand their menstrual cycles, what to expect when they get their period, how to manage them, and how to continue with everyday activities. Parents and guardians were invited to attend each of the presentations and joined their children with refreshments afterwards. Thank you so much to our PTO for providing refreshments and goodie bags. On March 14th, also known as Pi Day, Valley View students and staff celebrated the mathematical constant. The fun included pie trivia, videos, songs, memorization challenges, and even pie ice cube refreshments. Our students have been busy competing in various competitions this winter. I have a few listed here, and a big congratulations to all of our competitors, and I apologize if I miss any. Our school participated in the American Mathematics Competition. Congratulations to Yella C. Kogan, our 8th grade winner, Layla Costello and Pranav Agarwal, our 7th grade winners. On March 9th, Valley View students competed in History, Geography, and Science Bees held in Princeton, New Jersey. Ryan Wen, grade 8, qualified for Nationals in History and placed 4th overall. Omesh Cholin, grade 7, qualified for Nationals and Internationals in Science. He previously qualified for Nationals in Geography. Rohan Bajpayee, grade 5, qualified for Nationals and Internationals in Science and placed 5th overall. Lexi Costello, grade 5, qualified for Nationals and Internationals in Science. Marcel Gilbert, grade 5, qualified for Nationals and Internationals in Science also. And Daniel Markle and William Lee's team won the New Jersey VEX IQ Elementary Slapshot New Jersey State Championship robotics competition and will be representing the United States at the World Competition. So lots of wonderful accomplishments. I love sharing them with you, and to be continued. Congratulations to everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you, and thank you again for staying. Aaron, if you put up my slideshow, so I think Ms. Fickner and Mrs. Kidd gave my entire superintendent report, but I have pictures. So this was the last board meeting with Ms. Morrison and our orchestra. So we're starting from that date moving forward. Is it on its own like animated thing, Aaron? I'm guessing that's a yes. Perfect. Oh, no, it's fine. I just didn't know how long to talk. Here is pictures from our Battle of the Books held right in this room. It was a lot of fun. It was, the next picture comes, it was Miss Tricia Keene's last one here before she retired. And I was able to be here with Mrs. Berg, our new librarian. It was fun. When I was a 5th grade teacher, it was the highlight of the year, and I'd have to say here, because we involved so many grades, it was just terrific. Really enjoyed it. It's coming. It's coming. There we go. Here's all of us reading. All the next slides are us reading during Read Across America. By the way, did anybody else notice that Franklin, Here Comes Franklin song sounds just like Beyonce's new song? Just saying. I learned that from the officer. So as Mrs. Fickner said, a lot of us read in classrooms. I'm pinky swearing to something. I can't remember what, but there you go. And it was really a lot of fun. It was parents. It was so many of us. And I think I talked to Mrs. Fickner about this and some of the teachers. I would love not to just have to be in there during 1 week. Let's get you, Missy, to get in there and read, or the mayor, or Chief Anderley, right? Like all during the school year. I know that the kids, I couldn't believe how much they loved it. I read Harold and the Purple Crayon. You can see they all got a purple crayon. They all got to go on an adventure. And it was the only reason I could show up every day lately with doing all this other work. This is what we're here for, and we cannot forget that. It's why I show the pictures every month. Remember what we're here for. It's the students, right? So just a few more of our reading pictures and activity pictures. I guess I was in more classrooms than I thought because there's a lot of pictures. I didn't want to not highlight somebody because I know how much you love to see your kids. You always email me and tell me that you love this, so I don't want to leave it out. They also shared their adventures with their classmates. In some classes, we were able to use the document camera and the smart boards, and I'd love to see how we can continue to grow that with our problem-based learning and collaboration. Again, really a lot of fun in every classroom, and our teachers helping out also. I think we're almost past this, I swear. We might be able to do 10 seconds next month, Aaron. was Superhero Day. You'll have to guess what my superpower was. Yeah, definitely more classes than I thought. You guys all need to help out next year, all during the year. Then, as Ms. Fickner said, there was Rats. Miss Riley did an amazing job. If you saw this show, it was so professional. Nothing I've seen at an elementary school compared. The kids were amazing. The show was amazing. I just loved it and valued that a lot. And for everybody that helped, because to me it seemed like everybody helped. It was really a lot of fun, and you can see the kids had a lot of fun too. Even costumes. And this is our wonderful Mrs. DiNardo being honored by the students at Bayberry. The Women of Watchung event was only in its second year, but amazing. And a huge thing. There you are, Camille. Wonderful project from Sonia Abi Habib, one of our councilwomen, and all of the women that were honored that night. So deserving. If you don't know them or know of them, take the time to meet. Here are some pictures from some of those competitions. Mrs. Kidd talked about, this is the teams competition. You'll start to see some press releases. I was just a little busy last week. Some press releases honoring all of these students' accomplishments, and thank you, parents, for sending us pictures, and teachers. This is also the teams competition. Pretty amazing stuff happening. And I don't know that we know that, right? I don't know that, listen to that list of what students participated in and how far they've gone in those competitions. It's more than impressive. And it's a testament, these are our VEX winners, our VEX robotics winners. More than impressive, right? To have that level of involvement from our staff with our students. And that they are being so accomplished. Which one is this? This is history? One of the Princeton. And I know I have a spelling bee one. That might be the last one, the spelling bee ones. But truly, be proud of your children. Be proud of the programs that are happening because, again, this is what we're here for. You know, there's only one more slide, so it's you, I think. Although we know what you've been doing. There's spelling.
There you go.
That's the last one.
So in the business office this month, it's mainly about the budget, which you just saw, so there's not a lot to tell you. We did have a person, our payroll person, leave, which you, I think we knew from last month that was going to be happening, so that's really mostly our change. There's really nothing else other than this work, budgeting work being done right now, and then your day-to-day operations of paying the bills and working on, anything coming in. That's all I have.
It's your committee report.
We're waiting for Mo to come on.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to start with committee reports. Mr. Fraiche, can you please give us the HR committee reports, please?
Sure. 1 second. The Personnel Committee met on Thursday, March 14th at 7:51 p.m. The committee members involved were me, Jen, Anthony, and Manny, as well as Dr. Glazer. It was a pretty short meeting. The main thing that we focused on was the ESY program proposal, and the ESY is the Extended School Year program. The shared services program is still under consideration because a concrete proposal hasn't been set yet. We are sharing a nurse, an OT for occupational therapy, physical therapy, custodians, and other positions. We will be unable to house this required program here due to the referendum construction in both buildings, but this program will also save costs for us as well as Long Hill. The administration will be sharing a questionnaire for families who qualify for ESY in order to gather information on who will be attending. And then we also just discussed each of the potential BOE agenda items for approval. In addition, two other personnel issues were discussed by the committee. One, a new medical leave will appear on the BOE agenda, and the others being reviewed by the Board of Education attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you also read curriculum for us?
Just going to read them all.
We're short-staffed today, guys.
This one was also a very short meeting. Started at 4 p.m. on Thursday, March 14th. The committee members that were present were Phyllis, Dory, Fatima, and myself, as well as Dr. Glazer, Ms. Kidd, Ms. Fickner, Mr. Toda. And this meeting was also held virtually. And we also just discussed the extended school year program again. And we discussed that it will take place at Millington School in Long Hill Township from June 26th to July 24th. The school also has more classrooms and bathrooms to accommodate the children than the Gillette School, which was originally proposed. The current preschool tuition is also being looked at to help establish what the summer tuition will be for the 20 days of enrollment. And transportation will also be included for those who are eligible based on their IEP. And like I said before, a contract hasn't been reached yet, so the cost of the program has not been established. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amadeo, can you please read policy for us?
Yep. Policy Committee meeting. We met on Wednesday, March 13th at 5 p.m. at Valley View for over 4 hours. In attendance were Dr. Glazer, Mohammed Friege, Dory Harvey, myself, and Phyllis Jewett was virtual. Karen Bishop-Johnson also joined us for the first 2.5 hours to discuss some budget review. So for policy, proposed review, board member use of electronic mail, internet, which is already adopted, the internet policy, which is already adopted by the Board of Education in 2016, and policy 0169.02, board member use of social networks. They were both reviewed by the committee. They're related. The committee agreed to the language in policy 0169.02 and recommended for it to be on the agenda for a first reading. The committee agreed to keep both policies. Policy 2363, student use of privately owned technology. Dr. Glazer is double checking with the principals to make sure students aren't bringing personal devices to school, since we are a one-to-one district using Chromebooks. After the committee has provided that feedback, it will decide if this policy needs to be adopted or not. The policy is not mandated. Policy 2419 and Regulation 2419, school threat assessment teams. This is a mandated policy that is reviewed regularly. The committee will receive feedback from the superintendent as to how parent training will take place that is specified in the policy, and on how frequent the refresher training for staff needs to take place. This is a relatively new policy from the state, so finding out about the frequency of training might take some time. The committee agreed for the policy to be on the agenda for a first reading. Policy 5310, health services, also mandated. Dr. Glazer consulted with the school nurse and confirmed that they felt the practices in the health department are consistent with this policy. The superintendent was asked by the committee to find out if language could be added to the policy regarding the school's housing prescription medication, such as an EpiPen or nebulizer, which is something that we currently do. The committee agreed for the policy to be added to the board agenda after they are provided with feedback from our board attorney regarding adding the additional language. Policy 5330, administration of medications, is included in the board packet since it is referenced in the health services policy 5310, and the two policies are related. Policy 5512, harassment, intimidation, or bullying, mandated. The committee decided to stay with the option from the originally adopted policy, which was principal's preliminary determination on when an HIB is investigated. Dr. Glazer informed the committee that the schools have a school climate team, and the committee agreed that the policy should be on the agenda for a first reading. Regulation 8420.10, active shooter, mandated. Dr. Glazer informed the committee that this policy could not be found in the Strauss-Esme database, so the committee looked at existing adopted policies and feels that Policy 8420, emergency and crisis situations, covers this area. Policy 8461, reporting violence, vandalism, harassment, intimidation, bullying, alcohol, and other drug offenses, mandated. The committee agreed this should be on the agenda for a first reading. Regulations 5512, harassment, intimidation, or bullying. Regulation 7300.1, disposition of instructional property. And Regulation 7430, school safety, have all been abolished due to these other regulations that cover the content. I want to note that the policies that are abolished might show up in the policy alert under different policy numbers. There's a list here that I won't read to everybody of policies that also need review that we will be planning and scheduling out over the next few months to make sure we get through all of them. And so we'll be planning that out soon. Potential board agenda items. Bylaw 0164 is on the agenda for a second reading. The committee didn't have any suggestions or concerns about the change to the policy and didn't receive any feedback from the rest of the board. New business. Preliminary tentative budget. Mrs. Bishop Johnson provided the committee with the tentative budget proposal. During the proposal, she went over the district's revenue. Dr. Glazer and Mrs. Bishop Johnson provided the committee with a pie chart and all the details that we've seen this evening. Glazer reviewed what staff positions would be restored, for example. I'm wondering if I should skip this part since we've already...
I was going to say you heard it all.
District Goals Action Plan Draft. Dr. Glazer informed the committee that she would provide the board members with the action plan draft so we could review it. BOE Goals Action Plan. The committee discussed the action plan and the recommendations provided by board members. The committee agreed to the changes to the document, except for specifying a facilitator for the 5-year strategic plan goal. The committee agreed to keep the terminology to facilitator and not list any specific organization or entity. Any new suggestions for Goal 1 to find and appoint a new board member to fill our vacancy and supply support and onboarding to our new team will be discussed when the committee discusses Policy 0143 in May, since the board completed the process and this goal. Strauss-Esme policy software for the district. Dr. Glazer informed the committee of software from Strauss-Esme that could potentially assist the district in streamlining, updating existing, and establishing new policies. However, the software and services cost $78,000 annually.
$7,500, that must be a typo.
Oh, okay, $7,500. I was like, I don't remember that number. Okay, $7,500 annually. And she didn't recommend the district purchase such software. Providing policies to the public during board meetings. In the past, the board has not provided the community with a copy of the policies being discussed on the board agenda. The committee agreed that we would like all policies that appear on the agenda to be made available to the community for each board meeting going forward. Some important dates to remember that we discussed in the meeting are the final budget vote, April 25th, and the staff reappointment date of May 9th. That's it.
Thank you, Danielle. Jennifer, last and not least, operations, please.
All right. The Operations and Finance Committee met on Tuesday, March 12th at 5 p.m. It was a combination of virtual and in-person, and it ended at 11:45 p.m. In attendance were committee members Mohammed Frage as the chair, myself, and Dory Harvey, as well as BOE President Manny Gonzalez. Administration and guests included were Dr. Julie Glazer, Karen Bishop Johnson, Ricky Boyd, Ernie Turner, Frank Bowlby, and Connor O'Brien. So the roof we discussed. The roof package number 3 on the roof bids went out and they came back too high. Some of the problems were material costs and labor. Some contractors had jobs lined up already for the summer. This work is not tied to the HVAC project, so we will be going out for a second bid. And then we'll go forward from there. We may also look at state contracts, potentially looking at different materials if needed.
So, while you took a breath, so the board will have to reject the bids that we received, and there'll be a walk-on resolution when you get to action items under operations to reject the bids so we can re-advertise.
Thank you. Report from Ricky Boyd. He said he'll be working from April 1st to 5th on the faculty room. There'll be some acoustics work in the music room done as well. He's did a lot of research on the acoustic tile, found a great one, and he involved the staff in that decision-making. We discussed the packing up of the library books so that the summer construction work can occur. We got a technology update from Aaron. We got an ESY update that we've already discussed. We went over the budget, as was stated earlier, line by line, to make sure that we all understood it and that it was sustainable. I think that's about it.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to community engagement. Is there anyone from the PTO here?
Liaison.
Any liaison reports?
Sorry. So many marks here. Okay, board liaison reports. So Dory's not here for legislation. Okay, so Mr. Fraisch will cover.
So I have a couple updates. I'm just going to read through them real quick. So, wait, I think I actually did this one. Sorry, one second. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the security drills and students with disabilities, A1174S2057, which requires certain documentations of the needs of students with disability during school security drills and emergency situations, as well as in the security school plans. It more focuses on staff training and the needs of students with disabilities and emergency planning. There was also an update about the School Safety and Security Task Force, S3079A4977, which establishes a school safety and security task force to study and develop recommendations to improve school safety and security and to ensure a safe learning environment for students and employees. This task force will consist of 17 members, including representatives of various government agencies, education advocacy groups, including the New Jersey School Boards Association, and members of the public with expertise in school security. Another piece of legislation that was passed was the youth suicide prevention, which is A3526 and S1662, which requires the New Jersey Youth Suicide Prevention Advisory Council to prepare a report regarding suicide prevention instruction in public schools. In preparing this report, the council will develop a survey to collect data from local school districts, approved private schools for students with disabilities, and chartered Renaissance school projects. The councils will be required to submit the report to the governor and legislature within 12 months following the enactment of this legislation. There was also the student civic engagement, S2304A1271, which permits, beginning with the 2023-2024 school year, excused absences for students who attend civic events. Specifically, this law permits public school pupils in grades 6 through 12 one excused absence to attend a civic event each school year and allows for school districts to provide additional excused absences for such purposes. And as for the last one, this is about grief instruction. It's A5015, which requires the School Board of Education to adopt and districts to implement the New Jersey Student Learning Standards pertaining to grief in the comprehensive health and physical education context area, as it is the next required update of these standards. The standards will be included beginning in grade 8 and will end at grade 12, and would address the physical, emotional, and behavioral symptoms of grief, coping mechanisms, and resources available to students. Thank you.
You're going to cover the Somerset County Education? You don't have anything on that?
Yeah, I don't think there's no update at this time for the Somerset County Educational Services.
Okay. Ms. Amadeo, do you have a Somerset County School Boards Association?
No update.
No update? Jen, do you have any updates for School Boards Association?
The NJSBA is holding its spring conference on Friday, May 10th, 9:30 to 4 p.m. at the Princeton Junction. It will focus on student success, school safety, and public relations. It's in person and has a cost of $99 for any members. March 28th at 1 p.m., there is a free webinar on immersive learning solutions using virtual reality and extended reality. And the next Leadership Series workshop is April 12th in Randolph, and it's offered both virtually and in person and is free. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to community engagement. Anyone from PTO? No? Anyone from WEF? Neither? CPAG? No updates? Thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on to board member comments. Are there any comments from the board? Okay, seeing that there are no comments from the board, now we're going to move on to comments from the public on agenda items only. We welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during the meeting when the public is invited to speak. The first opportunity to comment on agenda items only is now. The second opportunity for public comments is towards the end of the meeting. Total allotted time for comments is 30 minutes. Before you make your comment, please state your name and municipality of residence. In the event it appears the public portion of the meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by the participant to 3 minutes duration. Our public forums are not structured as a question and answer session, but rather offered as opportunities to share input with the board. In instances where the board feels a response is needed, the presiding officer or superintendent will address the comments. New Jersey statute does not permit the board to discuss personnel or hiring public sessions. Names of students should not be used. Members of the public should consider their comments in light of legal rights of those affected and identified in their comments, and be aware that they are personally, legally responsible with potential liability for comments that they make to the board. The board shall not be held liable for comments made by members of the public.
I feel like we should have walk-on music.
Good evening, everybody. Scott Kaufman, 55 Glen Eagle Drive, Watchung. I want to take a moment to thank you all for your work on the budget. I know it's a starting point and it's, a living document, so it will evolve and change. I will say in my 14 years as a resident in the borough, it's probably the bleakest budget forecast I've ever seen, and it does cause concern for me as a taxpayer. I think that we're at a point where maybe we need to prioritize our priorities. And though it may be great to do all of the things that are in this tentative budget, we may need to be more thoughtful about what we really need to do and focus on the things that we really need to do. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the resignation of Ms. Esposito, Valley View music teacher. She's somebody my daughter's formed a really great relationship with, and I know that though the position will be filled, the person and the professional will be missed. And I know that my daughter will miss her, and I just want her to know that she has made an impact on somebody here. So thank you for your time, and thank you.
She'll love hearing that. She will.
Any other public comments? Okay, seeing that there's no other public comments, we're going to move on to action items. So administrative would be Fatima, so should I?
Just give it to anyone. Doesn't really matter.
Somebody else can read administrative.
Danielle, can you please read administrative action items?
1, approve minutes of previous meetings. 2, accept Bayberry and Valley View Schools security drill reports.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question about where in the agenda, or if we need to, do we have to rescind the appointment of the previous candidate for the board vacancy? I'm not sure how it was worded in the.
Yeah, I don't know either. Sorry.
I guess we added this.
The volunteer appointed to fill the vacancy, she resigned prior to taking the seat, so you have that resignation. I suppose you could formally accept the resignation, but you've
Okay.
appointed your new person too. So-
Just a question from,
I know, it's a good question.
Do you want to add it on as a second?
no, I just,
resolution,
you
in
know, if we
case?
could touch base with our attorney or something later to see if we need to do something with that formally. I just wanted to bring it up while we're,
To accept the
Yeah.
resignation? Yeah, no,
that's
I'm
fine too.
asking.
Yeah, we could accept, I don't know if it's rescinding the appointment, because we did vote to appoint in
I
the
mean,
So.
previous
so,
candidate. So,
You're in the middle of a different motion, right? So finish that one and then make a new motion.
okay.
Or we could do a point of order to add.
Right, or a point of order. But you have to finish the one you're in.
so let's do a roll call for this one.
Sure.
Mrs. Agliaro,
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo,
Yes.
Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia.
Yes.
All yes, motion passed.
Okay, Mo, can you please move
Wait,
personal?
because I think Cantina's going to make a,
I think we should add just an accept resignation of the other,
right, but you still have to vote, right? So
yeah.
somebody has to move it
I
and second
move-
it.
I move a motion to rescind the appointment of Jessica Maddox.
Would it be rescind?
I don't know.
Accept, why don't we
Accept,
accept
oh,
the
accept the-
resignation?
yes, accept
Karen's
the
writing it
resignation,
down for the
because we didn't
minutes.
rescind.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, hold on. Need one more second. Accept the resignation. Okay, and who moved it?
Oh, did.
And Jen second.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Wait.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo,
Yes.
Mrs. Agliaro.
Yes.
So good, you're doing so well.
No, I'm like, don't think too much.
So it's passed.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have Anthony move personnel because I'm.
Mr. Negracia, can you please move personnel items?
Yes. Item B1, accept resignation. B2, approve appointment certificated staff. B3, approve leave of absence. B4, approve leave of absence. B5, approve appointment of STEM SOAR leave replacement teacher, revised. B6, approve appointments. That's for the district testing coordinator and directed of gifted and talented, Karen Kidd. B7, approve Watchung Hills Regional Student Volunteers for Bayberry Aftercare Program. B8, approve the use of carryover funds from the Watchung Youth Services Commission grant. B9, approve appointment of leave replacement secretary. B10, approve appointment of long-term substitute.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Amadeo,
Yes.
Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mrs. Agliaro.
Yes.
All yes, motion passes.
Mr. Frisch, can you please move operations and finance items?
1 to 3,
You do have to read that.
and 1
I'm
to
just going to read it at the end if that's okay.
1 to 3 was already, you have 1 to 3, that one, and whatever.
Yes.
2. Right.
It is the end.
So I move operations item approve payment, 1, approve payment of bills, 2, approve transfer of funds from 23 to 2024, 3, accept financial reports, 8, authorization travel and related expense reimbursement for the 2024-2025 school year, 9, approve professional development / school travel and related expenses, 10, authorize sale and disposal of surplus flooring, 11, resolved that the Watchung Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent hereby authorizes the administration to enter into a shared services agreement with the Long Hill Township Board of Education pursuant to the NJSA 18A, colon 18A-11 for the 2024 extended school year program, 12, accept donations, and 13, which is an amendment, is to reject the contract for the recent bid.
Read the thing because it's not on the agenda.
So, resolved that the Watchung Borough Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, rejects the bid for the referendum project partial roof replacement at the Bayberry Elementary School as follows. Whereas the Watchung Borough School District Board of Education advised for bids for the partial roof replacement at the Bayberry Elementary School, and whereas the board previously held a public bid opening for the award of a contract for the project on March 5th, 2024 at 2:30 p.m., and whereas 3 bids were received for the project as follows. First bidder is Mac Group LLC. The base bid was $786,758. The second bid was USA General Construction LLC, where their base bid was $849,000. And Northeast Roof Maintenance Incorporated, where their base bid was $1,033,000. Whereas the apparent qualified low bid was submitted by Mac Group, MAK, with a base bid of $786,758, and the low bidder is over the amount budgeted for this project. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in accordance with the provisions for the Public School Contracts Law, the board hereby rejects the bids for the referendum project partial roof replacement at the Bayberry Elementary School.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Okay. Mrs. Agliaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo?
Yes.
Mr. Frage?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
And Mr. Ingracia?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, there are no action items for curriculum, so I'll move to policy. Mrs. Amadeo, can you read policy for us?
E1, first reading. I'll read the names of the policies. Board member use of electronic mail, internet, board member use of social networks. Those are bylaws. And then policies, harassment, intimidation, or bullying to readopt. Policy reporting violence, vandalism, harassment, intimidation, bullying, alcohol, and other drug offenses. And regulation 8420 for emergency and crisis situations, and regulation for school threat assessment teams. E2, our second reading, is for bylaw 0164, conduct of board meetings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Agliaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo?
Yes.
Mr. Frage?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, now we're going to move on to board business. Is there any board business to discuss? Okay, seeing that there's no board business, we're going to move on to comments from the public on any items. Please remember to state your name and municipality at this point.
Rich Desiano, 44 Kennard Drive in Watchung. Just one comment and one question. I want to echo Danielle's point about sort of thanking the two of you for how much work and everybody who put into this. I know it was probably a lot of time. So it was very much appreciated, the time being put into this to try to meet the gaps that we've unfortunately accrued over some period of time. I would say as an 11-year resident of Watchung, it seems that we've been able to skim out on some of our bills over the past 10 years. So making up for now for my kindergartner seems very worth it to me. So again, very, very much appreciate you guys having to make hard decisions. One question I did have, but unfortunately Ernie's not here, was I believe he said that the banked cap funds were available on sort of a moving 3-year window, and that we're using 800 and change now, and that there's 500 left over. But I'm curious if any of that 500 is 3 years ago and we're losing out on it, or because it's leaving the window.
Do you know the window?
I would have to check.
Okay.
See how much of it is leaving next year versus the year
Okay.
after. I can check.
Okay, thank you. That was it. I was curious, obviously, no rush on an answer.
Okay, great.
Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you for joining us this evening. This meeting is now adjourned.
I'm waiting for one of you to say, nope, I plan.